Mayday. Mayday. Can you read me? Come in, please. Can you read me? Still snowing, is it?
It's useless. You can hardly stand up, never mind dig it out. No luck.
Nothing's getting through.
3 series. They must be looking for us by now. Where the smeg are they?
It's possible to find us in this weather. They could be 10 feet away and walk straight past us.
We're going to die, aren't we? How much food is there?
There's half a bag of soggy, smoky bacon crisps, a tin of mustard powder, a brown lemon, 3 water biscuits, 2 bottles of vinegar, and a tube of Bonjela gum ointment.
Gum ointment?
Yes, it was in the first aid box. It's the minty flavor. It's quite nice.
It's quite nice if you smear it on your mouth also, but you can't sit down and eat it.
You may have to.
That's it. There's nothing else.
Just a pot noodle. Oh, and I found a tin of dog food in the tool cupboard.
Well, it's pretty obvious what's getting eaten last. I can't stand pot noodles. We're going to die, aren't we? Correction. I'm going to die. You're a hologram. You're already dead. You don't need food.
Did you find any wood?
There's no wood. There's no vegetation out there. Smeg all. Just a wasteland.
We can't let that fire go out. It's your only form of heat.
I'm going to die, aren't I? God, I'm hungry. I'm going to have the crisps.
No.
Just one.
You ate less than 16 hours ago.
It's all right for you. You don't even feel the cold.
Take your mind off it. Why don't we count down our favorite episodes of the first 3 series of Red Dwarf? Welcome, Smegheads, to a bonus episode of Thanks for the Memory, a Red Dwarf podcast, where we start with having too much fun in our own Red Dwarf radio drama as we rewatch every episode of the BBC comedy show Red Dwarf, and we discuss them. And as always, I'm here with my good partner across the pond from me in jolly old England, Lee.
Hello! It feels like so long since we've done that. I feel like I say this every time. It feels like so long since we've done this because it
has been long enough that I forgot to say I am Blake as always, and then introduced you. So yes, you're right. It has been just a little bit longer than normal.
Yeah, I mean, when we're recording this, we still have a previous episode from series 3 to come out. Pulling back the curtain. But yes, I kind of wanted these to sit in a time capsule and not be relevant to the time of year we're actually recording them, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss the fact that it is Christmas. And Blake, you got an awesome Christmas present from your good lady this year.
Oh, I did. Let me just take off this sweatshirt that I'm wearing right now. Because you knew I was going to wear it for this episode.
Of course.
And it is time to give Quiche a chance.
Oh my god, if you haven't seen it, go on our Facebook page or Instagram. I did post a picture of it. It's so cool. I mean, you did say you were going to get one.
I said I was going to get one, and it was funny. She kept saying this one box in particular was her favorite Christmas gift she'd ever given me. And then like she handed it to me that morning. I was like, I wonder what this is. Kind of light. What is this? And I'm like, this is tickets? What? It's so light. Like, what kind of a thing is this? And then I opened it and I was like, this is perfect. This is absolutely flawlessly perfect. And I'll give a shout out. It came from Hallion, Hallion clothing on Etsy. A nice chap named Gary from somewhere in the UK who was super helpful with my wife trying to get this thing shipped over in time to get to the US. And he thought it was cool that we had a podcast. He was he was blown away. There was an American who had a Red Dwarf podcast.
Exactly.
So Gary from Hallion Clothing. Not only is this shirt awesome, give Quiche a chance, it is one of the most comfortable t-shirts I have.
I sadly didn't get any Red Dwarf for Christmas. I did ask for one of the books, but no one got it, so I got a bit of Christmas money. I might treat myself.
Well, Lee, I will tell you, I almost shaved my beard down to a goatee and like little stash just to match. Remember, it was a thought this morning. I definitely crossed my mind.
That would have been amazing.
If we ever go full video, we'll then we'll talk about it then.
Oh, man. So, yeah, I mean, we've kind of said that we just wanted to sort of ease into the new year and give everyone a bit of content before we move into Series 4. But it is something we talked about was doing our top 5 episodes so far and then at the end of each series, kind of updating that to see if any. So effectively, like at the end of season 4, we'll revisit our top 5s and see if any from series 4 make it in there. But it's weird that this podcast came for you out of nowhere. For me, I mean, we'd kind of talked about it, and then just one day I was just like, do you know what? I need something to do. And it's like, Blake, do you fancy doing that Red Dwarf podcast? And you were like, hell yeah. And then within like 3 hours, I had a theme tune, the hosting setup, a Facebook page, an Instagram account, a logo, and all the rest of it. And again, we haven't given them enough shout. I want to give a shout out to Brian Cooper for the logo and like the artwork for the covers and stuff. Jeff Royds for doing the theme music. He's managed to capture the essence of Red Dwarf in a non-trademarked way that I love, and it's just it feels so Red Dwarf even though it's not.
When you first sent those to me, I was so excited. Like literally, it was like, yeah, let's do this. And I mean, it felt like it was within minutes. There was artwork and there was versions of theme songs to listen to. Do we change it? What do we do here? Like, oh my gosh, made me so happy.
Welcome to the world of me, that once I'm in, I am in all the way.
I can get that.
And it's just been so much fun going back through this TV series that, like I say, I think it's been 7 or 8 years since the last time I did a full rewatch. And like we said, for you, there's series that you haven't even seen yet.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know if I'm contradicting myself in previous episodes, but I've had time to think about it. I feel like when Netflix first started, the streaming aspect of it became popular, and it was like an app you could get on your old Xbox. Might even been 360. I don't know if it was Xbox One or not. Probably 2010, 11. I did a watch of most of them, but I don't know that I made it past series 7.
Which is weird. It's crazy to think there's episodes out there that you haven't seen yet.
Yeah. So, I mean, some things actually came out after that. So, like, so I made it that far, and that, and even then, you know, what's funny? I didn't sit down to watch them front to back. I kind of like, oh yeah, I think I watched the first one again, and then I started just bouncing around to my favorite episodes. Like, yeah. So I didn't really do this and sit down and even remotely think about them as a chronological one after the other story. And as we've discovered, I don't know how much they thought of that at times.
Well, it's interesting as well, like you say, the fact that how you got it in the US when it was first on, that you had no idea the order of those episodes, and then the fact that we've even come across ones that you haven't watched in series that you've watched in their entireties, apart from, so Stasis League's the one we talked about, that you watched that and was like, I don't know whether I've ever actually seen this.
Yeah, in fact, there might be. I started on series 4, and I feel like in the first 1 or 2, there's one I was like, I've never seen this.
Okay.
Like I don't, or either it was like I've seen the 5 minutes of something but never seen. Yeah. Are you familiar with the term TV guide? Was that a thing in England?
We had the TV Times and the Radio Times, which were like, one was like ITV and those channels, and the other one was BBC. So yeah, they're the same thing. Yeah, and because it was like you had the TV guide read, and a lot of times you'd have it also in. I think it was a Reader's Digest. They'd slap that in anyway. The TV guide, like in. Because it was, here, the public access PBS is very regional to regions. Sometimes it's for a whole state, like it is for me here in Connecticut. But when I was in North Carolina, there kind of was an Eastern version and a Western version. And they don't have to play the same things. Like there are certain things they all do. Like, I don't know, Sesame Street at 8 in the morning on the weekday, whatever. I mean, like there are certain things that are like set, but in the evening, that's sort of what became the block of like British comedy from like Are You Being Served? And I always forget the name, but the one about the guy who runs the bar in the French Resistance. Allo. There you go. Yeah, I always know what you're talking about when you say I can't remember the name of it. It's like, I know you're talking about Allo.
I gotta go back and watch it because I remember really laughing that as a kid, but I would not have seen that for
I don't think you'll ever see that on the TV ever again because it's
a little problematic.
It's very much of its time, yes. Yes. You're basically talking about a French cafe during World War II poking fun at the Nazis. Yeah, I don't think we'll ever see that again. I might be wrong, but
well, and then Faulty Towers, that was the other big one that would get shown. And then Red Dwarf, and because like you couldn't really trust the TV guide because it it didn't always list things, or the local station could change stuff out. Oddly enough, also got my love of astronomy through this, because the switch over from the regular programming of like North American stuff or local stuff for PBS would switch over at 11, and there would typically be this guy called the Stargazer that would come on for like a 3-minute episode, and he would talk about the weeks or the following few weeks astronomical things that you could see in the sky. So
okay,
and that was my lead-in usually to Red Dwarf. So
that kind of makes sense, to be fair.
Yeah, so it was a little. So I think that's how I caught the show, was that I would usually watch a lot of these comedies, but I would always want to catch his Stargazer. Was that what it was called? I believe was the name of his show. And would watch that, and it was this nice old gentleman that would walk out in front of a blue green screen with like he's in front of the sky. And he's like, "Oh, hello, stargazers!" And he was like so chipper of a science teacher kind of a guy. He's like, "As we look up into the sky and the yada yada," so, like he was great. And he was only like Brilliant. 3 minutes every weekend. You'd kind of get an idea of what was going on. And I saw many a cool meteor shower that I would not have known about in the pre-internet dark ages. And the only way I got the information was him.
Interesting. We're going deep in.
I will be so curious if our few American listeners, there's been one that was like, "Oh my gosh, this was my story, how Blake stumbled into it." If any of this resonates with any of them, if they also saw that.
I mean, look, our listener figures aren't huge, because let's be honest, it's very much of a niche podcast we're putting on here, but it's surprising how many American listeners we actually have.
Well, and how many they like, they do have some similar stories, because again, it's the late 80s, early 90s, finding this stuff out. I was right. It is Stargazers, the world's only weekly television series on naked eye astronomy.
I love how they call it it's like 3 minutes. It's hardly a television series, but okay.
Well, but you do tune in and you got your thing for the week. And you're like, all right, cool. That's what I got to look out for this week.
I'll tell you another thing that's blown my mind about when we decided to start this podcast is that it wasn't long after we started that they actually announced that we're getting, is it 2 or 3 new episodes next year, or this year as this will come out?
Oh, yeah. That there's something new.
I can't remember whether it's 2 or 3 episodes.
Yeah, I don't want to say 3. Are they 3 longer
that
ones?
Sounds about right. I think they did 3 episodes for the last couple of series.
This is, according to, Reddit announcement in April, a new 3 episode.
That makes sense.
Special.
Yeah, that's what they've done. I think for the last 2 or 3 series they've done, they've been like 3 hour-long episodes.
I would just like to say the first comment on the Reddit rules.
Okay.
I'm so excited, almost 6 of my nipples are tingling, is the first comment.
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. It's just, like I say, because I've immersed myself in Red Dwarf a little bit more, so I'm in like quite a lot of Facebook groups, it has been genuinely surprising to me how much love there is still out there for a show that effectively has been over for a long, barring like, these new series that have come out, but in its entirety, that's been over for, I don't know, 10 years or more, that it still has a huge fan base. And
it's a series that's ended properly twice.
Yeah. I think I'm going to say yes. I don't know, because I can't remember.
it's wild, but these things are burnt, and the people that you talk to, these things are burned in their minds.
Yeah.
Like, to where we're on this rewatch, I'll go, "Oh my gosh, I know this moment like the back of my hand. I couldn't have told you that it was in this episode."
Right.
But like the particular moment is just like burned in my brain. There's some episodes where the story, the plot is so tied into what's happening that you can't shake from it, kind of like say Polymorph or Marooned or something like that. And then there are others where we've always, a lot of times those openings to the show could have been anywhere, like that whole who's hotter, Wilma Flintstone or Betty Rubble, like conversations.
Which is weird as well that we're getting a new Flintstones movie this year.
See?
Bizarre.
It was meant to be. It was meant to be.
So weird. So weird. I mean, we were talking about before we got on weird synchronicities in life, and they just keep happening. It's bizarre.
There are no coincidences. Are we playing Assassin's Creed now? That's what we're doing.
Shall we get started then, Blake? I think we go through, we do both like our 5s, then our 4s, then our 3s, then our 2s, then our 1s.
So are we going to do this so that we each have our own list, and we'll see where it sits as each season moves forward?
Yeah.
All right, I love it. I didn't know we were not going to duke it out to get a show list.
No, I think that's too hard to do.
Yeah. We need a third person to do that. You can't do that with two people. It's just deadlines. No. You need a third. Okay, so we should have probably talked about who will go first, but I'm happy to go first on the first 5.
Go first. Yeah, go for it.
So I have it the end for me.
Oh,
it's
interesting.
Weirdly enough, you asked prior to recording, how hard was it to put your list together? This spot was probably the hardest for me. Because I will spoiler alert and say I don't have another season 1 thing on this top 5.
That's interesting.
And it felt that felt wrong to me. So I have I have the end season 1 episode 1 as the very first episode as my 5. I had a tough time with this fifth part. in general, I made this list very fast and then I edited it for 2 hours. I feel like,
perfect. That's the best way to do them. I think just to do it, like just to throw your gut instinct out and then go back and look at them.
And I'll say this one is a little bit of, do I enjoy it on a rewatch as much as the rest on my list? The answer is no. And that's how I tried to kind of do it, to be like, hey, don't think about like this or that, or just like pure enjoyment. That's how I was trying to go. But I will admit this one's a little bit of like, I don't enjoy this one as funny. It's not tight yet. It's the very first one. But on this rewatch, the thing about the end to me that like was so cool was, while it's not completely tight yet, and you know, all the nuances aren't there, and of course they aren't. This is the first episode. And you can feel the like trying to figure it out, both from the cast and the writers, and how it's going to fall. Man, all the pieces are just there. Where you go,
100%.
Yeah, brilliantly cast. You can't imagine another way. Like, and we talked about, I think in that episode, and we don't talk about this anymore once we got to season 3. But there would be these moments where like, oh, the joke was there and they went one too far, or they, or like, I feel like the joke was this, but they kind of went a different direction that wasn't as funny. But again, it all feels kind of like experimentation and like, I don't know, it's like a Fringe Festival show in the best way possible. I mean that like, and I find it super enjoyable. And while it's not as like just out of the box enjoyable for me, on retrospect, it's so good. It's just so wild to look at and think things that I love, like that I think are just like flawless episodes, 6-7 years later, the seeds and everything are just so perfectly set up right here. And I guess that's something you can say of like really well done sitcoms that you've known throughout history. Like it is true that you're like, man, but this one is different because those sitcoms take place in someone's house or someone's apartment or their place of work. This thing starts that way, but then changes completely. And even though it starts to become almost Doctor Who, and it's like you never know where they're going to be each week kind of a thing. Like they're not just going to be on the Red Dwarf. It's still set up so brilliantly right here. So number 5, the end.
It is. Spoilers, I do not have the end on my list, but I completely agree. As far as opening episodes to a series go, it everything you needed to know about what the show was, is, and is going to be, is there for everyone to see. Yes, it changes and they hone it a little bit. Like you say, there was even a joke in that little intro radio play that we did that I thought about dropping out when you said they went a bit too far, and that was the pot noodle bit. When he's like, oh, well, you know what's getting eaten last. And I felt like I nearly dropped it out, but I thought we'll do it as in its entirety. And everybody knows the whole Everybody's Dead Dave, because it's iconic when it comes to Red Dwarf as well.
Yes, and it's iconic. It sets everything up so well. And even though it's a day and age of a show that came out that they didn't count on people going back and watching the episodes again, the lore is locked. Yeah. The lore of this thing in this one episode is locked so hard that in some weird way, there's a world where you could have started with the second episode and just explained what happened.
Yeah.
And just been in the middle of things. And this is almost a prequel. it's almost episode 0.5 because basically it's doing the setup to get you to what the show will be. But it could have been done in flashbacks, a different show. Matter of fact, does the American one do that? I can't remember.
I don't know. I haven't watched it, but we will.
But yeah, you almost could have done a second episode as your first episode and done interstitials to explain it, right?
Yeah.
And this kind of has a prequel thing where it gets you right to where you need to be. And even though they're not, using the cat and things like that, well, the other argument is I don't know that you could yet because you kind of need that time for it all to gestate, for lack of a better term, and become what it would be. I find that first episode, the more we rewatch, fascinating because it's like they got lucky and they were brilliant at the same time.
Yeah, because it just introduces every character. Like the characters don't really change because they don't need to. Like Rimmer is Rimmer, Lister is Lister, the cat is the cat, Holly is Holly. Like from the word go, they are who they are, and it's perfect.
Yeah, and I almost pushed back on you. Say, well, no, they changed. Like, well, no, actually, they don't change. They still behave those ways. The only thing as the show goes is we learn why they are that way.
Yes,
and so they don't really change. I mean, we talk about those moments like, oh my gosh, Lister's now really trying to be nice to Rimmer. Heart of gold. Then he's like, you friggin'. And the same thing with Rimmer where he's trying and then like, so you're right though. They don't. They are set core, and the only thing we learn is why.
The core of who they are is always the same, but I think how they are with each other changes because of the time they've spent.
It also helps the BBC style of doing these short series, we don't have like in the States where like, what was his Friends, 9 episodes, whatever a season it is. You see them age as the show goes.
Yeah.
And there's jokes in the third season about, hey, Lister, you're getting a little around the middle, and like, you're not 20 whatever anymore. And it's true. So like, I also like that they're so young that in a way these sort of, amateurish is the wrong word, but like the way they come across in the first episode and first season totally fits still. Like, does that make sense? Like how awkward you are when you're younger and you just don't own yourself the way that you will.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I see that with our youngest at the moment of how they are awkward around people and like still trying to be confident and not realizing what the world actually is, and then looking at me and the missus who are like completely confident in who we are right now and where our place is in the world. It's very much.
Yeah. See, again, we always get into way more stuff than I'd ever think we would in the Red Dwarf podcast.
So my number 5, I kind of put this on. It was the lower end ones that were, like you said, were difficult. And I feel like I've put this on because I felt guilty I didn't have an episode from series 3.
That's I don't have one of one. I need to have one up there. It's funny.
And it's probably the most iconic episode of Series 3 at this point. And you are sporting the T-shirt from that episode, so I kind of had to put it in there, and that's Polymorph. Because it just is. Like, if you say to any Red Dwarf fan, really, Polymorph is one they're going to pull up as one of the best episodes ever. And it's always one that I kind of enjoyed, but was never overly like, it's amazing. But then rewatching it 3 times and then talking about it with you, it is a quintessential episode of Red Dwarf without a doubt.
And it's another turning point on the show as well. They discover something, you can tell in that, and they go, there's juice to this, playing with how the characters are and their personalities and tweaking them or making alternate versions of them, whatever.
And it's the first episode we've had that's been kind of action-packed. The only one that's had any action, really, apart from the last episode of Series 3. The rest are all very sort of story-based. This one was like action-based.
Yeah, they're all situational comedy, and this one is slightly 80s action.
But it is funny, and it's funny, it's at least in my memory, the only episode that gives us the word twat in it, which, yes, we had a comment on, I think it was our YouTube channel, saying, yes, how Americans pronounce the word twat gives me the ick as well. I was like, I'm right there with you.
I love it. I can't hear it and not think. I was watching, we're watching the Vox Machina animated series on Prime right now. I don't know if you're familiar with it all, but the Critical Role guys do the live play D&D stuff. And their story got animated. Great animated show. And one of the main villains says that to one of the characters. I was like, so you can tell she's from the UK because she says that correctly.
Oh, said it properly. Okay, yes. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Cool. Okay, number 4, Blake.
Okay, this is fun. Because now I'm thinking, I wondered how close our list is going to be, and now I think it will have similar things, but I think it's going to be flip-flopped all around. So I have, now that I see this list, it's making more sense. It's why I picked it the way I did. Number 4 for me, I have Better Than Life, series 2, episode 2.
Interesting. Okay.
Because
spoilers again, I do not have that in my list.
Oh, whoa, no way. Oh my God, I totally would have guessed this would have been in here. This is exciting. Okay. I thought, man, this would be boring. I bet we picked the same five things, but they're just in different orders. So I did Better Than Life, and it is almost a mirror, or we'll call it a future echo of my reasoning for the end. When Better Than Life pops up, the show is slaps you in the face in the sense that it takes place on Earth. Yes, it's in a video game, but like it's not filmed in the ship. They come off of location. The boys have an adventure, yes. And that'll become a thing that starts to happen more. And it's funny looking at I have intentionally stayed away from getting into like Red Dwarf fandom and what people think about the device of like, I don't like it in this and it's no good anymore after this season and yada, whatever. Like, I want to be clean of that. I want to make my own opinions as we do this rewatch. So I've stayed away from that, but I do know like the one underlying thing is a sort of a division of, I liked the show as a sitcom. I hate when it became an adventure of the week. And then other people that are like, the sitcom was okay, but I really like when it became an adventure of the week that was funny. Yes. And it's because this show does kind of, diverge. I would say, I think we're going to come into that more in series 4 or 5. There's more hints of it in 3, but
yes.
But this is like to me a kickoff. Like I see this on our rewatch and I go, oh man, this is getting to be the dwarf that I know. Because it really was the reruns that played the most for me as a kid were series 4 through 6. And so having a bit of an adventure to it and not that there have been sci-fi elements, but this is very sci-fi. We're going to play this video game. And also it's just, this is our first, there's the Me Squared stuff or Me Too stuff. Have you?
Me Squared. It's Me Squared. Let's not get into Me Too.
Oh yeah, right. Me Squared. Me Squared. That you do see this glimpse of like the sadness of Rimmer.
Yes.
But like, my goodness. I mean, talk about another core thing that just gets set. The absolute disdain that Rimmer has for himself. Like, however bad you think everyone else thinks about Rimmer thinks doubly worse.
Yes.
That core concept, boom, is in this episode and never goes away again. It's always there.
Yeah, it is a really good episode. Again, like you say, it's interesting as well that it's one of like an episode that you put in. It's interesting that I know we haven't had Crichton much so far in these 3 series, but your first 2 episodes that you've chosen don't have Crichton in them.
Nope, and I do love Crichton, but I got some favorite Crichton pieces coming. Like in my brain, I think I know some that are going to go into my top 5 as we get to 4, 5, and 6. But it'll be interesting because I'm looking at these a little different than I used to. I do love my Crichton though. He is my favorite. Interesting.
I do like Better Than Life. It is a good one, but again, it didn't make it into my. If you've been listening to this show since the start, you will understand why I have what I have moving forward from this point on, because I've said for the longest time that series 1 and 2 were my favourites. And it's funny, it's not that I went off it when it became Adventure of the Week, but I do really like those tight sort of sitcom episodes of the first 2 series, and that's what's made it mostly into my list.
I think that's why the show endures the test of time, though, is because it didn't stay one way or the other.
Yes.
And so,
because we've said, haven't we already, that they mix it up. So like even in every episode, there is that Adventure of the Week, but then also a kind of like Marooned in the middle of... Is Marooned in season 3? Series 3. Yeah. So even though you've got those big Adventure of the Week episodes that Marooned is a harken back to those first two series where it's just Lister and Rimmer in a space together, and that's it. And I love that. I love that they never lost that, but needed to branch out and make it not just, like we said, it would have been so boring if they'd just been on the ship every week, because it just would have been the same thing.
Yeah, I appreciate how it felt like as they went, they were like, you know what? We could just keep making this a problem, or we can move forward. And you know that that's a problem, and it can be a problem within other things that happen, but like this to make the sitcom like to roll forward.
So my number 4, I really struggled with this because I had to include it. I had to include it, even though when we reviewed this episode, I was like, I didn't enjoy it as much as I used to, but it is the name of this podcast, and so for that reason alone, I had to have it in as my number 4. Thanks for the memory. I've said before, I love any media where you kind of see the aftermath first and then find out. So like The Hangover or Dude, Where's My Car? That type of thing where it's like they wake up and all this gone wrong and they have no idea what happened. The black box is missing. Kat and Lister have both got broken legs. The jigsaw's been done even though no one remembers doing it. And it's probably still one of, not my favourite, but one of my favourite Rimmer moments, at least so far, when he starts explaining like, oh, it's aliens and this is how they talk. So it must mean hello to you. So they break your leg, which hurts like hell, and they do it below the knee. So hello. And they do it twice too. And jigsaw must mean you. Hello to you. And it's just, that is Rimmer through and through. And it's just such a good episode.
His delivery of that, it's so great because it really does feel like he's coming up with it on the moment, and like how desperate he is to like, you know, it's funny because psychologically we get the idea that he went into why am I forgetting the name? Space. What's the organization?
The Space Cadets, is it? Or the Space Corps?
Space. God, what is it now? That's gonna make me nuts now. But he gets into it because like he wants his dad to be proud and be like his brother. Yes. But then there's like this. You're like, I think this is really why he went into it.
He's so desperate for alien contact. And it's funny because you've mentioned it right from the start that, at least in your memory, obviously the episodes you haven't seen, that nothing is alien that they've come across. Nothing so far, at least. It's all been like man-made or a disease or whatever it might be. And it's interesting that Rimmer has this real thing for wanting to come into contact with aliens, but never does.
But never does, wants it so bad, but everything's created by people. It is a Space Corps. I you know how I just reminded myself? Crichton. Space Corps Directive.
Yes.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Your impression of him is brilliant, by the way. I love it.
I just one of these days I'll build that that'll be my Halloween costume.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, I'll do a whole family thing.
But yeah, I had to include Thanks for the Memory just purely because it's the name of the podcast. It was the episode for the longest time they always said was my favourite episode ever, and it's just, I just love the way it's written is perfect.
It's so good. This is the one that that was my 5th one that was battling for that in the end. I was very late and I was like, I don't have anything series 1. I should make it the end. That was kind of like my deciding factor, because Thanks for the Memory is also one of those that, like, while it does get a little more, they do break out of the ship a little bit. You get to the planetoid to do the grave site or whatever.
Yes.
But it does kind of have a view that the world is bigger than just these corridors to a water treatment plant or wherever it is they film Red Dwarf. It is, and the world gets a little bit bigger, and I like that a lot. And Thanks for the Memory.
Yes, interesting. So we're 2 in and have no crossovers so far.
Well, number 3 has already been mentioned for me.
Okay.
Is this right? Series 3, episode 2, Polymorph.
Yep.
As I'm wearing wearing my Give Quiche a Chance shirt. I love Polymorph. We've already talked about it because that was your 5th pick. It is that hit me as a kid square between the eyes because I love Alien, the Ridley Scott film, and Aliens from James Cameron, and this thing just like totally parodies it. And it's always funny because Patrick Stewart tells a famous story about someone saying you should see this show, and he's like, they're ripping us off, they're just doing Star Trek. And then he's like, oh wait, no, I see what they're doing, and it is weird because they don't really do parody much, but every now and then they bring something up, and like it's not really this one is kind of a bit of a parody of Alien, but like that's not the point.
I think it's more they do homage rather than parody.
Yes, it's like a visual gag homage, because the actual plot of this thing removing parts of your personality are, obviously not like Alien at all. It was funny to see how the concept would come back, though. Have you started series 4?
I have not yet, no.
There's a thing, I don't mean a polymorph, there's a reference back to the polymorph episode in an episode where they say something, I went, oh my gosh, like, I don't think other than like the twins, being born over, I don't think I'd heard, but they actually referenced something back to a prior episode. So we'll get to that when we go into series 4, but I just love polymorph. It's so fun. It's Crichton getting to, be Crichton, but then not be Crichton when he becomes like the jerk version and stuff. I absolutely adore it. And just, you've had my mum. Like, yes. And I love Angry Lister. Oh my God. I love Angry Lister so much. And strap a nuclear warhead to my forehead and we'll nut it to oblivion is still one of my favorites.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was my number 5, but interesting. It wasn't a surprise that you had it somewhere in your list. I'm actually surprised it's in the middle rather than further up. So I'm intrigued to see what your 2 and 1 are at this point. My number 3 is let's test your knowledge, Blake. Series 1, episode 4. And it's in there for one kind of moment, really. So, Waiting for God.
This isn't the chili chutney sandwich, is it?
No, that's Thanks for the Memory.
That's Thanks for the Memory.
But yes, we need to do that. We need to do that sandwich. No, Waiting for God.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's not the Waiting for God stuff, although I do quite like that, because it does make a lot of sense. And again, parodying religion and stuff, it's quite funny. It's the garbage pod bit that I just think is amazing, and I have put it as our outro to the show because it is, at least so far, my favourite Rimmer bit ever.
And it's really funny for all the names that we were trying to come up with our podcast that we never suggested it's a garbage pod.
Yes. Yep.
It's a Smegging garbage pod. I cannot believe that never... I like Thanks for the Memory. Actually, I think it fits our show better. I'm saying I just can't believe that it never came up as a suggestion. And then when that episode hit, I was like, oh my God, how did we not? It was like right there.
Would have been perfect.
And then,
yeah, absolutely.
How isn't there a Red Dwarf podcast called It's a Smegging Garbage Pod? I don't know, but that's...
I mean, the name that I originally came up with was already taken. And I didn't even realise that it was someone else who was creating our logos and stuff. Like, you do realise there's already a Red Dwarf podcast called that. And of course, I'm like, of course there is, because why wouldn't there be? It makes sense.
So,
I love that whole garbage pod with the Quagars is just... Quagars. We don't get enough of Angry Rimmer, or we haven't had a lot of Angry Rimmer in Series 3 on, and I don't know how much we get, but I adore 0 to 60 Rimmer is the best thing ever.
It's it deserves to be in the top 5 just for Quagars.
I love it. God. The amount of posts I have seen on Facebook over Christmas because of turkeys that's like, oh, it's a slain Quagar warrior. You're like, oh yeah, perfect. Like all these half-eaten turkeys.
Hey, at least for spot 3 we have a crossover because we have an Alien homage and then an Aliens reference in Waiting for God for the Smegging Garbage Pod. So there you go.
Interesting.
Our 3 have a kindred spirit. Okay. I'm going to guess my number 2 is your number 1.
Okay.
For number 2, sucker, is Queeg, season 2 or series 2, episode 5.
Interesting that you've got this as number. I'm really intrigued to see what your number 1 is now.
Queeg, for any form, at least of visual media first. I'll stick for a show right now. It might get bigger. This is probably the best slow burn to a joke I have ever enjoyed in my life. I mean that, and I love that it's filmed in front of a live studio audience. And so to hear their reaction to the Jape of the Century, April, May, June, July, Fools, is so good. God, it's
and that's
brilliant.
It. The whole episode is just set to make that joke at the end.
But this episode works because as they sort of, I almost don't like saying as they transition to Adventure of the Week, because to me it's still a situational comedy where you're putting people in these situations. One of the reasons Red Dwarf works so well is how serious they take everything that's happening in this episode. Even in the beginning when they're like, Holly, you freaking could have killed us. Like, what are you doing? And it's very serious, and they are totally justified. It's just like getting upset with someone that you love, and you're like, you're a freaking idiot. And then you take them away, and you're like, oh my God, that's not what I wanted. I didn't want you to gone. And it's so real. Our cat has a sweet goodbye to Holly. That's probably the most heartbreaking bit. I mean, it's so good. You get your first real glimpse of Waiting for God. I forget which episode that is. That series 1?
Series 1, episode 4, yeah.
So that's your first glimpse at Lister with a heart of gold, because he goes against his own beliefs, right? To help out Kat and this guy. And this one, to me, really solidifies okay, Lister's a really good guy. He's a slob and he's a mess. And he thinks of himself first, but weirdly is selfless. It's an odd combo that I honestly think is one of the reasons he might be popular is it might be kind of realistic.
He's just a normal person.
Yeah, nobody's flawless, right? We have that family member we love and you may have looked up to as a kid, but they're not perfect. And so there's I don't know. There's something about the Queeg episode that hits me so good. 1, structurally, great joke. 2, the thing with the characters having honest, real moments of drama and oh my God, this is terrible. And as we talked about when we did it, we don't have descriptions of the subsequent episodes. For all we know, I mean, this is it for Holly.
Yeah.
Or at least for a while, or it's going to be a 2-parter and what's going to happen. And, I don't know. You guys in the UK as compared to America, you are not afraid to off a main character at all. And I think it's why I started gravitating to some of your shows and stuff, because it's you just don't know who's safe. What was a popular one in Britain? It's called Spooks. Over here it's called MI6.
Oh, I never watched it.
But you know what I'm talking about, though, right?
Yes.
You've heard that show? Yeah. I think we started watching it again. It was when Netflix started streaming, and I was like, oh my God, the cast changed in 2 seasons because everybody died.
Wow, yeah, I've never seen it. Spoilers.
Or something to that effect. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't, to me, I'm totally in it. The first time I watched this, I think Holly's gone, and it's the joy of the rug getting pulled out from under the cast as much as the audience at the same time. It's brilliant. It's so good.
It is very, very good.
I bet it's your number 1.
I'm just going to leave it right there now, because it is a very good episode. Everyone knows who listens to this how much I adore Holly. It's probably why a lot of Series 3 episodes haven't made it in, because I do miss Norman Lovett as Holly. I do like Hetty Hayridge as Hilly Holly, but I'd much prefer Norman Lovett.
Well, I would say I miss Holly even with her in it in Series 3. I didn't realize how little she gets used compared to 4 and 5. She gets more in screen time. It's almost like they were afraid, and I hate that, because she is good, and so it takes a bit to let her kind of run on her own.
I think it's maybe that thing. We talked about it a little bit at the beginning, because you had they struggled to find Kat's place in there, and and they played with a 3, but then realised they needed a fourth person in there, and that's when Crichton come in. And Crichton coming in's kind of pushed the need for Holly out a little bit, because that then creates a spare wheel, as it were. And so I think that's probably why a little bit. But yeah, Queeg's a great episode. So my number 2 is I'm really intrigued to see what your number 1 is now, because I genuinely thought Queeg was going to be your number 1. My number 2 is another episode from series 1, and it is the second episode of that. If I was to go out on a limb, I think this might be your number 1, but you've already said that you only put the ending because you didn't have something from series 1, so I'm guessing not. Anyway, Future Echoes is, again, another one of those episodes that plays around with a sci-fi concept in a really fun way, but then also sets things up further down the line. That we talked about it a lot, that the second episode in sets up so much stuff and could have been placed anywhere in the first 3 series, and plays with a real big sci-fi concept, but it's such a good episode from start to finish, of like seeing the future happen and then trying to figure out what the hell's going on, and then trying to, like, obviously Lister thinks he's going to die, even though it's not him, but then is trying to mess about to make sure he doesn't die, and that whole, it's just the second best episode from start to finish so far. I absolutely adore it, and it was one that was never really, obviously it was on my radar because I watched the first 2 series a lot, but when I was watching them and when it first came out and then through subsequent rewatches, it wasn't an episode where I was like, oh yeah, that's one of my favourite episodes. But rewatching it now, it's so good. It's funny. The story's really well written. The sci-fi concept's great. It's just a nearly flawless episode, in my opinion.
Future Echoes is really good. It was, when I was trying to get my shout for season 1, it was tough because Future Echoes was also another one that was high on the list. Future Echoes is really good, and it is remarkable.
I can see you struggling with it now.
Well, it's really good, but it's remarkable how in series 1, the first episode and that second episode, it's so much stuff that it's just locked into the lore from here on out. And there's stuff that I think even up through series 7 that I saw still ties back beyond just the premise of the show, but things that pop up still ties all the way back to these first 2 things. And it is, if I could sit down with the team and it's Rob Grant and Doug Naylor, but also like the directors and stuff, Ed I would love to know how surprised they were that this worked, because I just can't think of even TV series that were meant to be, well, you didn't do stuff like we do now where it's a continuation of a story. That is a relatively new thing. For now all of TV does that. To some points, maybe to a bit of a detriment. Or that I just hate that everyone, that's the default, I should say. Right now.
Because the problem is now when things don't hit and they get cancelled, there's always stuff that people love that the masses don't, and then you never get a payoff as a fan of that thing because and it makes it hard to go back and watch. Oh, it ended on a cliffhanger and then they canceled it. And this does such a good job of like everything is encapsulated in an episode, but I'm really shocked at how much they carry forward through all the rest of the show through those first 2 episodes. Is remarkable to me. So, but I get that shout. I'm surprised you didn't have this one in there, because I know when we talked about this episode how much you enjoyed it as well. Right, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to get my number 1 out the way, right? Because I want a cliffhanger of what you've got. Because yes, you called it. Queeg is my number 1. How would it not be? It as the huge Holly fan that I am, how could, even though he's not in it that much, how could I not have Queeg as my number 1? It is the episode we've watched so far that I have enjoyed from start to finish. All 3 times that I've watched it, because we've said this before, we generally try and watch the episodes 3 times before we sit down and record, and sometimes that third watch is a detriment to it a little bit. Because, like, you watch the first one is a refresher. The second one, you kind of watch it and you see it for its parts. And then sometimes that third one, you start to see the things that aren't great about it more because you focused on it even more than you were those first two times. Queeg, on the other hand, just got better every time I watched it.
I love that episode. I can watch it anytime.
And that's why I'm surprised it wasn't your number one, because I know how much we talked about it. Even when we talked about doing this list, you were like, oh yeah, Queeg's probably my number one. I'm like, oh, well then it's going to be both of our number ones. And then for you to pull the rug away from me and go, actually, it's my number two. I don't know what your number one is, and I'm trying to think. I have an idea, but I tell you what, it's not. It's not Body Swap.
No, it's not Body Swap. Oh, God, I should have put that in there.
So I have an idea in my head. I'm going to hold it in there, and I will be truthful if I think it's right. But, Blake, drum roll.
So, it was weird when you sent me the content because I thought it was on purpose, but you hadn't seen my list. My number one is season 3, series 3, episode 1, Marooned.
Perfect. Yeah, I did not know that. Wow.
That is one that I can watch anytime. I love it. Also has a good slow burn, not as an epic slow burn because you're in on the joke, and I appreciate that because I think we talked about in the episode. You could have done this like the Queeg episode, and you could have, as an audience, thought he burnt the guitar too.
Yes.
And I like, and this time they didn't do that, and you're in on the joke. But when the first time we saw this episode, or I rewatched this episode, I was like, man, yes, I did not realize that's where this episode hit. It's so good. And I love the restraint of, hey, we've got Crichton now. We've got a new status quo on the ship. Let's start with like a bang. We're going to crash the ship, and the main 2 stars are going to be stuck for 90% of the episode together. It's a 2-person show. And it's like such a because the show, the effects, the way things look, we get Starbug. It's so much changes. And it is, again, I would love to know if this was what was in their head. I'm probably thinking about it more than they did, but it is a brilliant first episode because
it's the second episode, actually, Blake.
Or second.
I've just looked it up. Yeah, second one.
Second episode. Yeah, the first episode is backwards. I always want to...
Yeah.
Let me put a pin in that. I got a comment about that.
In my head, that's what I thought you were going to have backwards. If I was to throw it, I would have said backwards.
No, backwards bothers me for one reason. It shouldn't be the first episode.
Okay.
Because it's weird. It's too many changes.
Yes.
Here's what I'm going to say without I don't know. Anyway, my problem with the backwards is the way it falls. And if backwards was the second episode, I might be more with you, because I love this because, yes, it follows, we've made all these changes, and yes, it follows backwards where there's this Crichton guy who's got a ton of time, and who the heck is he? And I mean, you saw him played by someone else in the, it was still the 80s, right? Still the late, it's been 3 years or 2.5 years. And you're like, what are we doing here? We're on Earth. We're not on Starbug anymore, or not on Red Dwarf anymore. And then you go to Marooned as your follow-up episode, and you literally bring the dial all the way back to basically series 1.
Yeah, it does feel very much like a series 1 episode.
Yeah, literally one room is 90% of the episode, and it's the two of them. And again, kind of like the Queeg thing, the reality of not being found, starving to death is treated real. Rimmer is... I love that you're like, is Rimmer really caring about Lister right now? Or is it that if Lister dies, he'll go nuts, and then his battery will his best hope of escaping is with Lister. And you're not sure. Does he really care, or does he only care about himself? And it's been 2 series now, and here's an opportunity for these guys to really bond. And especially because of the Backwards episode prior, you almost get the idea that, oh, Crichton is going to be the hands and body of Rimmer. That's what it's, now that he's in the cast, that's almost what they set up, is that, you know, with the driving test and everything else, you know, a lot of the adventures you couldn't do with Rimmer because he's a hologram, you could do because Crichton is his surrogate body. And they kind of smashed that really quick going into this second episode. And it's such a throwback. It's so small, it's so tight. It's like a stage play. I mean,
yeah.
They changed the way they filmed it. We talked about they got the handheld cameras to get in close and make it feel claustrophobic. And there's so many big swings they took that I commend them for. We have more budget. We have more stuff we can do. We're going to change the way we film. We're going to get artsy with the way we film this. It could have gone really bad. And instead, they layered those things all on just enough to still feel like it's part of the Red Dwarf universe. And the most important thing is the relationship between Rimmer and Lister. And this episode is just perfect. You go through the whole gamut. They care about it. They're angry at each other. They're snarky with each other. They care about each other. They crack jokes on each other. Like it has everything that you love about the show, about it being the two of them in this episode. So tight. I think they call it a bottle episode when they make some excuse. They would talk about it like on Star Trek Next Generation to film something in one room. There's a murder mystery. We can't leave the room. Really, we got no budget left for this episode. So but it would force them sometimes to make a classic episode because, and I don't know if that's the case here where they needed a cheaper episode and, you know, how do we contain? It doesn't matter. Nothing about it feels cheap.
No.
It feels so good. And
yeah, it is.
I love stuff that, you know, if the molds are poured correctly for all the relationships, Marooned like sets the concrete for, if I'm mixing metaphors a little bit there, but like it boom, like for how these guys are. And I love it. My problem is my Freudian slip. It should have been the first episode of
You're probably right.
3. It's my problem with series 3 is that I feel like those two needed to switch. Now there is a world where I could understand a leader being like, we need to start with a bang and a bunch happens in Backwards.
Yes.
But it's so much coming out of series 2 into 3.
Especially with that scroll, and like if you're not paying attention, which back in 1989 or whatever it was, there's no way you would have been able to read that scroll. So you literally go into that episode having, what the hell? Yeah.
Well, they got a droid now? Oh, I guess I remember that episode.
No, where's Holly gone? Have I missed something? Like I told you, Corey Hall, one of our listeners, he was like, I've just started series 3. Did I miss something? And I'm like, oh, you need to go and read the scroll from the beginning.
I was convinced. Like as a kid, I kept trying to find the episode. As I got older, where is the explanation? I'm still missing this thread, and there is none.
No, it's like a Star Wars 2 minute and it's gone.
Yeah, and it's gone. And this one is a better first episode. God, I in my brain, I even wrote down episode 1. I was like, for series 3, it's to me, it's the start of the series. And Backwards is this weird, as I do like Backwards a lot. It's just a bit of a whiplash.
Yes, I get that. I mean, we've talked about a lot of these episodes in each series that they could have come in different orders that potentially would have made more sense. But then, like you said, when you were watching them, you had no idea what order they were in anyway.
Nope. No. Again, something I'm missing from in modern TV is like, because everything is so episodic and it is so important to see the previous one, that a lot of that is I feel like gets lost really bad, and especially in stuff like this. I don't mean like, you know, stuff meant to be episodic is totally fine, but like your ability to jump in on a show, and of course now you don't have to jump in on a show because you just go stream it, you know.
Yep.
So it's a very different, you know, setup. I got to go back and look at series 3 real quick. Backwards, Marooned, Polymorph, Body Swap, Time Slides, Last Day. I mean, any of those, God, you really could rearrange any of these, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Because unlike series 1 and 2, where there's definitive kind of ending on both of those, even though the 6th episode is, well, we haven't gotten to it yet, right? Last Day has got to. air.
I mean, when people are listening to this, it'll be out.
Right. I know. See, we have our own time slide situation. While it's called Last Day, that doesn't have to be last episode of that series. In fact, that could have been.
I would argue that point, because I remember when we talked about Queeg, I felt that episode would have been better as the final episode, because if you were looking at it as being the final episode, then you go, oh, this could actually happen because it's the last episode, and maybe we move into the new season without Holly and Queeg as the ship's computer. Then that being the last day, being the last episode of Series 3, potentially, spoilers if you haven't watched it before, but he's not going anywhere, that it could have been like, oh, is Crichton actually going to leave and we're going to get a new droid, even though they've only just introduced him at the beginning of this series. That's
true. And I do like the sort of, it sets up where Crichton will go in the future, the whole like trying to be a person, which it's one of my favorite scenes is in the very beginning of Series 4 as we roll into it, regarding that. But you still, like, from just a pure story point, these don't matter. Whereas in obviously Series 1, it does matter. And I feel like Series 2 does. Backwards is just such a weird first one to me.
It really is. It really is.
It's
like, I wish I could remember how I felt watching it for the first time. Like, whether I thought, what the hell is going on? Because I don't remember. It was a long, long time ago.
Well, and I think as I had watched it, probably there's a good chance I saw that one out of order. I wouldn't think twice about it.
No.
Right.
But if you were watching, like now, if you're watching along with us on this podcast for the first time you watch that episode in prep for the episode of us talking about, you're going to, hang on, have I missed, what the hell?
Yeah, what did I miss?
Yeah. Bizarre. Interesting. I like the fact that there wasn't a lot of crossover.
No, I mean, we both had Polymorph, and we both had Queeg.
And that was it, I think.
And you wrote Marooned into the opening of the episode, which I love.
Yeah, I did, which is interesting. And you say it's one, the more you've talked about it, that I probably should have had it. I'm happy with my list, but Marooned is much more of a Series 1 episode than it is a Series 2 episode.
Yes.
Series 3. Sorry. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a Series 3 episode. Yeah.
Wow. Then it's definitely more of a Series 1 and 2. Definitely more one of that sort of through a microscope, just really small episode that I love what a lot of those first two series of Red Dwarf being about, and the fact that it didn't, like, I like it, but I don't know, there's something quite about it that wouldn't put it in my top 5. But hearing you talk about it is like, yeah, it is a really good episode.
Is this also give us alert? This is not a daffodil. Does that give us that? Is that the opening of Marooned?
Yes.
So it does give us also a glimpse of the performance from Hallie that Holly. I will enjoy so much for her version of Holly. That kind of stuff. She's very good at that. Like, this is going to sound weird. If Norman Lovett is amazing at just, what's the word I'm looking for? He doesn't, just completely aloof, but yet is responsible for everything.
Yes.
Shit, her version is dumb in the best way. It's two sides of the same coin, but I appreciate that they kind of approach it at different angles. I do love that whatever that is. Look, this is not a daffodil, awooga.
It would have been very interesting to see what the first two series would have been like with her instead of Holly, but then also series 3 onwards till he comes back, of what Hilly would have been like as Norman Lovett, like how much different it would have felt. I'd love to introduce that. I don't suppose, do you know the reason he left?
I think it was just a career thing. I still remember reading, it wasn't like I don't think it was a problem.
We should have to look into that before the next series, because I'd be interested to find out what the reason behind him actually leaving, because obviously he comes back in like series 7 or 8 or so, whatever it is. Yeah. It's definitely there's a scheduling thing. I feel like I don't feel like it's anything crazy. Because he's not someone I remember seeing in other things. That's the thing. It's not like you watch things now and you go, oh, he's left. Oh, it must be because he was doing this or whatever, you can kind of look and see what other people are doing and why they probably left a certain thing. Back then, I don't remember seeing him in anything else.
Well, he's a stand-up guy, right?
Well, I'll take your word for that.
Him doing stand-up and stuff. Yeah, like...
I can't imagine that.
Yeah, so he's a British stand-up comedian and actor, best known for his portrayal of Holly. But like, I feel like that's what it was, that he was on tour or doing his thing and scheduling. I feel like it's something like that.
That makes sense. Yeah, that would make sense. Although, the weird thing is, especially when you look at it now, you'll go, he's just a head on a TV screen. They could have just recorded his bits any time.
Well, yeah, in today's day and age, he literally could film that in a closet.
Yeah.
And just
go
be
and
like,
put yourself in the just go and get a green towel, put it in your cupboard, and just stand and just record your lines, and then we can put you in.
It will send you a box you can take to your hotel room, just put it on, done.
Yeah.
What's happening, dudes? But I do like for Maroons, you get a glimpse of like her Holly that I will appreciate.
Absolutely interesting. So moving forward. So like I say, when we get through the end of series 4, when we get through the end of series 4, we'll go back through and adjust our lists if they need adjusting.
That's going to be tough.
It's going to be interesting.
Like, if you hit something, you go, oh, where does this go?
Yes.
Does it go into fifth?
I like it.
Does it like...
We could get through every episode and have our definitive each list of our favourite episodes of... How many is there in total? I think we went through like 48, I think I looked at. How many series is there where it's like 6 episodes?
Oh, well...
What's the one? Is it 12 that comes out this year?
It would be. I do know that if you go to IMDb and click on the episode guide, it says there's 75 episodes.
Wow, okay, there's way more than I thought.
But I don't know if they're counting some things... Well, yeah, season 13 is just a special, right? Yeah.
Is that the one that's coming out this year?
No, 14 will be the one that's coming out. 13 was the special that came out in 2020.
That was just one episode.
Yeah. And then the last proper season that was six episodes was 2017, which I'm excited to see series 12 because people have told me they think I will like it.
Which was, so the last one that had 6 episodes, what series was that?
12. That's
weird because they did the Back to Earth episodes that were only like 3. When were they? I'm confused now.
2016 was series 11, which also had 6 episodes.
That's what my memory of those is all over the place then.
10 is series 10 is 2012 with 6 episodes.
Okay.
9 is 2009, 3 episodes of Back to Earth.
That's weird. That's weird that they did like a 3 random episode at series 9 and then came back and did 2 full series again.
Yeah. Well, I think when we get to 9, we're going to talk about this. It's weird anyway.
Okay, I'm intrigued to get to those.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
And 7 and 8 were 6. No, they weren't. 7 and 8 were 8 episodes.
Okay. My memory of those, like I say, I think I've only seen like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and onwards. I've maybe seen 2 or 3 times, and then the specials from probably 2017 onwards, maybe twice.
Oh, my Lord. We have to remember this, because when I got to Series 7, I just pull up the numbers. Series 7, the episode description is Ace Rimmer rescues Princess Bongella.
Nice.
And we definitely had the Bongella gum ointment.
Yes.
Marooned. Wow. That's the crap that kills me in this show as you go for. You're like, that we'll bring this back. That's what I mean. They never treat this like something that hasn't been, you don't just have the ability to go back and see again. Of course, that's 97, so the DVDs and stuff would have been out, but still.
But Bongella is an actual brand of gum ointment over here.
But I know that's what name her. Yeah, but I mean, to name her Princess Bongella, it's like flawless.
Yeah.
There's no way that's not on purpose. Oh, man.
Without a doubt. Anyway, you're getting too far ahead, Blake. We haven't even gone on to Series 4 yet.
I know. I'll stop now. I'm so excited.
Okay.
Well, I've written these down. They're locked in 12, 29, 24. Our picks. I have them. And we will have these for posterity to go back and look at.
Absolutely.
As we move things around.
Yeah. All right, take us home.
Oh gosh, right. There's that. I was having too much fun.
I know you were.
I was having too much fun. All right. Well, that will, as you said, bring us home to the end of the podcast. So be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Dwarf Memory and Twitter at Dwarf_Memory for all the show updates.
And pictures of Blake in his Give Keys a Chance t-shirt.
That's right.
Don't forget, subscribe, rate and review the podcast wherever you can. And you can email us your comments to dwarfmemory@gmail.com.
The next episode we will be discussing will be the first episode of Series 4, which is Episode 1, Camille. And it's a delightful one.
I have no memory of it.
And you get no memory?
I have no memory of it.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, it's very Crichton-centric, so it makes me very happy. So make sure to watch that before you see the next, or join us on our next episode.
I'm not interested.
And they killed each other over which colored cardboard hat to wear.
I'm not interested.
But don't you think it's amazing?
Nope.
You know what happened to people who didn't eat hot dogs on Fuchsia Day? They were stoned to death by stale donuts.
Braswell, what do you want me to say? Congratulations, you're a god?
I'm talking about the suffering. People died. I mean, cats died. Cat people died.
You've just come here to rub my nose in it. I could have been a god, you know, given a different start in life, given the lucky showbiz break you had.
I didn't want to be a god. That's the point.
Oh, vomitization. I don't believe it. I'm God, but it's a bit of a drag, actually. Come on.
I'm not a god. I've just been misquoted.
Braswell, for my money, anyone who goes around reading meaning into any old gobbledygook deserves everything they get.
I mean, if I had 8 socks on my laundry list instead of 7, or if I own more than 1 pair of underpants, they might have been safe. I just wish I could meet them and explain and apologize.
Well, that would look spectacular, wouldn't it, Braswell? God returns in all his splendour and says, sorry, it's all been a bit of a cock-up.
I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to become their god.
Well, I didn't ask to be killed, Braswell. Life's a bitch. Now smeg off, I'm busy.
I mean, they just made stuff up, you know. I'm supposed to have given them 5 sacred laws. 5 sacred laws. I've broken 4 of them myself. I'd have broken the 5th, but there's no sheep on board.
Bye-bye.
I mean, Lee, what sort of holy writ is this? It is a sin to be cool.
Look, I'm sick of hearing about these stupid cats. My concerns are slightly more meaningful than what coloured, stupid, smegging cardboard hat I'm wearing. I'm trying to decipher this. This is science, laddie. You can smirk, Braswell, but I believe the Quagars.
Quagars?
Quagars! It's a name I made up. Double A, actually. I believe the Quagars have the technology to give me a new body.
Never mind this, Todd. Where's the cat?